And there's been a lot of people having different views on it, that it's really important that we put it into our water system. Otherwise, everybody's teeth is going to fall out. To the other extreme is, it's the most poisonous thing there ever was.
Oh, Zion, dear Zion, home of the free.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you by the Defending Utah Liberty Store. The new book, The United States Constitution Made Easy, by Lonnie D. Crockett, Ph.D., Anderson Accounting, Trust Plumbing, Higher Calling Firearms, Mini Zoo Comes to You, American Appliance, The Editor Lady, Shem Financial Services, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith. Welcome back to AM 1640. This is Ben McClintock with my co-host Micah Turner, and we are joined in studio with our special guest, Dr. Jeremy Thompson from Thompson Dental. So, I didn't turn your mics on. Sorry. Good morning, both of you. Again.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah. I need to make sure and watch my buttons. So, this is a topic that has been very controversial. I know back just earlier this year over in Duchesne County, they were having a big vote to put fluoride into the water out there. I know this has been a controversy in Utah and Salt Lake counties for decades. They've been talking about putting it in the water, not putting it in the water. And there's been a lot of people having different views on it, that it's really important that we put it into our water system. Otherwise, everybody's teeth is going to fall out. To the other extreme is, it's the most poisonous thing there ever was. And so we wanted, I remember a couple of years ago, I went to one of your presentations, Dr. Thompson, on fluoride. And I thought it was really interesting because as a dentist, we think of dentists being just in doctors in general, of being kind of entrenched in whatever the dogma is of that industry. And it was interesting that the perspective that you came from and the research that you did, and I really appreciated that, and I wanted to have you on to talk about that. We've been talking about having you on for a while. I really appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So just kind of tell us about how you got to the position, before we tell everybody what position, what you found, kind of tell us about how you got there. And then if anybody has a question about this, please give us a call, 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640. We can talk about what areas have it in Utah, what areas still don't, and kind of what we can do. So go ahead and kind of talk. How did you start to research fluoride because of your background as a dentist?
Well, you're taught certain things in dental school, and when you learn things, you always have to find out, for yourself, how much of it's true. A lot of what we learn, we are just told that that's the way it is. The dental industry in general thinks fluoride's, the magic pill that will solve all of our decay problems. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you kind of have the, if you want to put it, conspiracy theory side of it. Clear over on the other side is, like you said, it's the most toxic substance on Earth, and if we touch it, we'll die. But, fluoride is just an element. It's you look on the periodic table, and there's fluorine just below chlorine, and it's a naturally occurring substance. It's not necessarily bad, but like anything else, it can be bad if used in the wrong place or the wrong amounts or the wrong combination or the wrong type of exposure in the environment that it's put in.
So are there two different kinds of fluoride? One's more dangerous than the other, or are they all the same, or what is?
Well, fluoride is just a nickname for fluorine in combination with some other element, because it doesn't occur naturally by itself. It's when put in water, it'll form an ionic form, so it'll dissociate to a fluorine ion with a negative charge, just like chlorine. So let's take salt, for example, sodium chloride. You put it in water, and the sodium and the chlorine disassociate from each other, and they float around as individual ions, the sodium having a positive charge and the chlorine having a negative charge. Well, fluorine is just the same way. And so when it's found in drinking water, for example, it will usually be in an ionic form. But when it is in a solid form, it will combine with some other element, like salt. When it precipitates, the sodium and the chlorine reattach as a macromolecule, and it becomes table salt if it's dehydrated. So fluorine's the same way. So we find fluoride as a fluoride salt of one kind or another in nature. Fluoride salts are pretty little crystals. They're usually yellow or orange or even purple. And so they mine it. It's actually the 13th most common element on the planet. So it's very prevalent. It's found in almost...
Very unlucky.
Yeah. Well, found in almost all drinking water at some level or another.
Even if you have a well.
Yeah, you'll have...
It's not like just because you have city water you've got it, but even if you have a well, you've got fluoride.
Most typically it's found as calcium fluoride in natural water sources because calcium being fairly abundant. But it'll also bind with magnesium, it will bind with lithium, it will bind with any of the alkaline or alkali metals or the alkaline earth metals.
It's chemically very sticky.
Yeah, it's got that negative charge, so it's gonna glom onto any positively charged alkaline earth metal or alkali metal.
That's what I was thinking.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you. Go ahead.
Anyway, so what's too much and what's too little? They say, this is kind of the industry standard.
Sorry, I wanted to back up
Go
again.
ahead.
So you wanted to find out for yourself. These are the things that you learned in school, but you wanted to find out for yourself. And so how did you kind of come across what you've come across before we kind of get to that?
Well, what happened was that in Riverton, where I was practicing, there was a big movement for the city was considering fluoridating the Riverton water supply. I understood a little bit about the costs involved in doing that. This costs millions of dollars to set it up and implement it. It's a lot of taxpayers' dollars. And based on what I already knew about what fluoridating the water meant, I knew it was a bad idea. So I just let the cat out of the bag. I'm not in favor of fluoridating water, and hopefully by the time we're done talking about it today, you'll understand why I believe that, and I think you'll agree that fluoridating water it's counterproductive. So I'm not of the opinion that fluoride itself is bad, and I think there are positive applications of it, but I think it needs to be done with knowledge and not because everyone says so, not just because everyone thinks that. I think that's the worst possible reason to do something.
But there's a billboard that says, if I love my child, I'll give him fluoride.
And I'm very aggravated by those kinds of billboards because I think, that's just playing on the emotions, but it doesn't, as if I don't love my children if I don't want to fluoridate the water.
Sounds legit.
Not the children. So, if you get too much fluoride in the water, it can be bad. So about 1 milligram per liter is a normal amount, but there are places in the world that have as high as 8 or even 10 milligrams per liter, and that can be harmful. There's a village in China that's kind of famous in the dental world because they have so much fluoride in their water that there's many of the people in the village that are disfigured because of the fluoride. What it does is you have to understand what fluoride does in the bones. Fluoride and calcium will kind of stick in the same spot in our bones. Our bones and our teeth are both made up of crystals called hydroxyapatite. And it's a very strong crystal when it's chemically combined with calcium. It makes a very hard crystal, but it's very acid weak. You put acid on a calcium crystal and the calcium will disassociate from the crystal and the crystal become weak. That's how tooth decay happens. You put acid on the teeth, the calcium leaches out, the crystals become weak, and they start to degrade and decompose. So calcium is kind of a deposit withdrawal type element. In all of our bones, our bones are big calcium banks to regulate the amount of calcium in our bloodstream to ideal levels, which is regulated by our parathyroid hormone in our body.
But not fractional reserve banks, right?
That's your department.
Right? Okay.
So this calcium has to be regulated within fairly tight levels in order to have normal functioning of our body. And pregnant lady, for example, is growing a baby. She needs a lot of extra calcium, so the body will just start taking it out of the bones. And the bones, those crystals they can let the calcium go, and the calcium can come back. It's easily disassociated. However, if you keep taking withdrawals, eventually you're going to bankrupt your account, and so that's what osteoporosis is essentially. Now, fluoride is interesting because that fluorine ion will actually bind in the same spot as the calcium will. However, when it chemically binds with that crystal, it's not easily dissociated by acid anymore. And that's the whole premise upon which it's good for teeth, is if you put that fluoride in the place of calcium, it will stay there when you have an acid attack. It will not come out of the crystal. And so you can put acid on a fluoride crystal and it just remains inert. It doesn't degrade and fall down. So hence,
Just coat your teeth with fluoride, and you can drink
Coat
soda
your
all day
teeth.
long.
Wait, so literally the idea is we need to replace the natural chemicals in your body with this other chemical?
to a certain extent,
That is like that is like freaky science fiction right there.
it is. And so let's take a
Holy
clinical study,
crap.
for example. So they took pregnant women and they fed them a certain amount of fluoride in their diet. They found that by measuring what came out in the breast milk, that it was always consistent. So if a mother was given 10 times too much, the same amount always came out of the breast milk, regardless of the amount given to her, unless, of course, she wasn't given any, and then none came out. But up to a certain amount. And that tells me that the body has a certain regulatory mechanism that gives the baby the ideal amount. So what we find is that if tooth is properly balanced between the calcium and the fluoride, you have an ideal balance between resistant to acid and resistance to physical stress. So you need to have a hard crystal, so you need the calcium. But you need to have an acid-resistant crystal, so the fluoride's good here and there. If it's and so the idea with topically applied fluoride is you combine it with an acid.
You mean like in toothpaste?
Yeah, well, in toothpaste or in fluoride treatment in the dental office, for example, they use stannous fluoride, which is fluoride combined with tin. They put it in a foam. They put it on the tray. The tin, the acid eats it leaches the calcium out of the teeth deliberately. Then the fluorine ions are present, so they jump back into those spots. That crystal is then kind of saturated with a certain amount of fluoride ion. The idea then being that tooth will then be further, much more resistant to chemical breakdown by acids from plaque. If we eat acidic foods and we have bacteria in the mouth, the bacteria poop on our teeth and it causes the acid that leads to our tooth decay. So in theory, it's actually
Things are pooping in
a
your
good idea. So do I believe in fluoride? I believe it has a place. I believe it has a certain amount. I think that they are overdoing it, and particularly opposed to putting it in drinking water, especially because it doesn't do any good. And we're basically mass medicating the populace. We're giving them all this medicine, supposedly, but there's several reasons why that's a bad idea. First of all, fluoride is only good systemically if you can get it into your body in the first 18 months of life. Here's why.
Systemic as opposed to topical.
Right, topical versus systemic. And if you understand the difference between those two applications, that kind of clears up the mystery. So systemically, that's what they're medicating when they put it in the drinking water. They're trying to let's get it into the body. Let's have people drink it. It'll get in the bloodstream. The bloodstream will take it to the bones and the teeth, make the teeth harder, so to speak, which it isn't actually harder. It's just more chemically resistant. But the problem is it doesn't work systemically unless you get it in your body while the crystals of the teeth are growing.
So past 18 months, it's not
Beyond
effective.
18 months, the permanent enamel is formed on all the teeth that will come in later at age 8, 10, 12. Only the wisdom teeth are benefited beyond age 18 months. The enamel's already done growing.
And the wisdom teeth come out later on anyway, so...
So unless you're getting fluoride in the first 18 months of life, particularly in utero, which is why, the mother's going to give the baby the ideal amount in utero. The breast milk will give the baby the ideal amount up to age 18 months. So are babies drinking tap water? Absolutely not. What mother would be giving their baby tap water? It just doesn't happen in our society. So
I wouldn't give my baby that, Phil.
So we're mass medicating lawns, we're mass medicating toilets, we're mass medicating everything else and showers and everything, and we're dumping,
soaking it up through our skin. And
all these gallons and gallons of fluoride are
Save
going
the feces.
everywhere,
Toilets.
everywhere except for where it's intended to be
Right.
to receive a benefit. So there's absolutely zero reason to put it in the drinking water.
wow.
So, however, topically it can have a benefit.
Past 18 months.
Or throughout our life.
Oh,
We
okay.
can kind of boost, because we have such an acidic diet, because we Americans have like 100 times the intake of normal amount of sugar in our lives. We have a very acidic diet. We have bacteria that also like sugar just as much as we do. Streptococcus mutans is the only bacteria that causes decay. Even of the hundreds of varieties that might live in our mouth, it's the only one that causes tooth decay, because its poop, basically, its waste product, is essentially much more acidic than other types of bacteria. So it's just a plain old bacteria. It just wants a place to live where it's warm and dark and moist, just like anybody. Brian, you like to be somewhere where it's warm and dark and moist.
I love my marsh cave.
Yeah, you're soaking in the bathtub, warm and dark and moist, turn off the lights. But bacteria, they just need a place to be where it's warm and dark and moist, and they have food. So if we provide an oral environment where it's warm and dark and moist, and we give them food, then they will multiply and they will poop on our teeth, and that acid will break down our teeth. So
I don't eat sugar, so I'm safe.
So by topically applying it, you can bolster it if there's a need for that, if the teeth have a deficit in fluoride, so that they're chemically more weak. So we do find people that if they grow up in areas where fluoride was in the drinking water, they have more acid resistance. They have better teeth because they grew up in an area where it was naturally occurring in the water. They drank it when they were tiny, probably, before 18 months, and they find they actually do have better teeth.
Except for that, but you had that case in China that you said it was too much?
You get too much. You get too much, and you have soft bones, soft teeth. They just bend. They literally bend.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
And that's something that you can't control. So we're going to go we're going to our break. And so when we come back, we'll be talking again with Dr. Jeremy Thompson about the benefits and the dangers of fluoride, and what can we do individually and as a family to be able to help make sure that we're doing it the right way. Right when we get back from the break, right here on K-Talk AM 1640. Welcome back to K-Talk AM 1640. I am your host, Ben McClintock, with my co-host, Micah Turner.
Hey!
And we are joined in studio with our special guest, Dr. Jeremy Thompson, mythompsondental.com. Thanks for coming. And just as, I guess, full disclosure, you are my dentist. And what a great dentist you are. It was just kind of funny. I have to tell the story. We had our doctor's appointment the other day with you, brought my kids in for their checkup. And my 5-year-old daughter, was with the first group of kids that came in. And then when the next couple days later, the next group of kids come in, she says, I want to go back. And so, I mean, I think it's great that you get 5-year-olds wanting to go back to the dentist. So I think that tells a lot about what kind of dentist you are. So
that could change at any moment, though. If he pulls out the big drills.
I think a lot of that comes from our parents' generation was used to going to the dentist and white-knuckling it through a very uncomfortable experience. And so a lot of times they try to prep their kids by, it's going to hurt, but here's what you do when you go to the dentist, Johnny. Just hang on to the chair. It's going to be okay. Just have courage, Johnny. Have courage, We kind of psych them out, and they come in just trembling, expecting to be hurt at any moment. We tell them to be brave and this kind of stuff. And I think if a child comes in and they're not prepared, it's usually our best patients, because it's a new experience. It's fun. They get to ride in a chair. They get a prize. They get someone looks at their teeth for a second. And it's fun, and they just...
You didn't prepare your kids.
Yeah, so
what does
sometimes...
that say about
you? It's a different world now. Dentistry is much better.
Yeah. So we were talking about fluoride, and, sometimes that can sound like maybe it's not a very, exciting subject, but I think, it's very controversial. There's a lot of different websites. There's even billboards saying if you love your children, you're going to give them fluoride. There are websites saying that it's the most dangerous thing ever. And just like I mentioned in the last segment, you had out in Duchesne just this year, they were actually proposing to put it in their water. They fought it there, and they weren't, and so they stopped them from putting it in the water in Duchesne. But I know that other places like Salt Lake County, I don't know if the whole county does, but a lot of the cities here do. I've heard that some of the places in Utah County don't have it yet. And so this is kind of it's not a dead issue. This is coming up, and you talked about in the last segment how basically it's mass medicating people is what the cities are doing, the municipalities are doing when they put this into the system. And so, and we talked about, just if you're just joining us now, that there are benefits to it, especially if it's taken internally in the first 18 months. And so that's some of the, but after that, it doesn't really do a whole, because your enamel's already established by that point. So if you've got any questions or comments about this, please give us a call, 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640. But let's kind of go from there. We brought this up, so let's kind of continue from there.
So the question might come up, well, if you're drinking city water, then it's got fluoride in it. How come that doesn't work topically? And the answer is it's not in high enough concentration to really matter. So the ideal amount for incorporating into your bones as you're growing is what they're putting in the water. But people don't know how much people are really drinking, so you might be over-medicating one person and under-medicating the next person, etc. But again, it only benefits children, and they're usually not the ones drinking the tap water.
And medication usually is under the supervision of a medical professional,
right,
as opposed to just dumping it and hoping you get the right amount.
Right, so they're writing a prescription for the entire state. In Riverton, where we had it first proposed to come in, there was a big push by the state to put it everywhere. when the billboard campaign was going on. And I went and talked to the city council when it was being brought before them, and I just explained a few of these things, and they killed it, and it didn't go through Riverton. The next year it came back, and it was reproposed. There was different people on the city council at that time, and they heard it again, and I said the same things, and they said, oh, we're not doing it. This happened 3 years in a row. By the fourth year, they brought in some other people. I guess that Riverton was resisting the movement, and so they sent in somebody from the state in a suit, and he came in and gave a slideshow presentation that took the entirety of the time that was available to discuss it in the city council meeting. And so I sat there and waited for my turn, and they said, time's up. Thank you very much. We're done with that subject, so moving on. So they didn't really get to hear my presentation, and so that was the year that it went through in Riverton.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have some people calling in that have some questions they would like to bring up. So let's go to the phone lines. You're on K-Talk Radio. I'm Ben McClintock and Micah Turner with Dr. Thompson. What's your question?
Yes, I just had a question for Dr. Thompson. I was wondering if he had ever seen the documentary Poison on Tap. And I can't remember if it was on Netflix or I saw it on YouTube. It's about fluoride and how dangerous it is. It's a great show. Also, I have a family member that makes deliveries to the Jordan Valley Conservancy District, and the sidewalk outside the area where they deliver the fluoride, where it has spilled on the cement, is totally eaten away. And it's pretty caustic material. I was just wondering if you had seen that documentary and any comment about the hazardous conditions that these people at this water district are working in, putting this in our drinking water.
I can definitely address that. First of all, I haven't seen that particular documentary, but I can tell you why the sidewalk's disappearing. Like I was saying earlier, not all fluorides are created equal. They're not putting calcium fluoride in the drinking water. They're not replacing what you would naturally find. Now, you notice it's calcium fluoride. Calcium is the very element that it's replacing in the teeth. So there's going to be a perfect balance of what's happening chemically when you have the calcium fluoride. So in my opinion, calcium fluoride is the ideal fluoride to have. But what they're putting in the drinking water is an entirely different substance. One of the most caustic substances known to man, in fact, it's called hydrofluorosilicic acid. It actually is a derivative of the smokestack scrubbing of phosphate fertilizer factories. So silicone is a great binding agent for the toxic chemicals, the sulfur especially that goes up in the fumes in a smokestack. So they put these scrubbers in there. The sulfur is bound to the silicone, and you end up with this big barrel full of toxic sludge called hydrofluorosilicic acid. They take that silicone fluoride acid and they sell it to municipalities. It's a lot cheaper to sell it to municipalities than it is to pay billions of dollars to put in a toxic waste dump. So if you follow the money for the funding, for the advertising, the lobbying, all the pushing for putting fluoride in the water, if you follow that money, it comes from the fertilizer industries.
That is absolutely true. The room where they add the fluoride to the water, it's a sight to see the equipment in there as it's being destroyed. The fluoride eats the lead in any pipe and the copper pipes into your home. It's terrible poison.
Yeah.
And
we use fluorosilicic acid in the dental office to actually etch porcelain. So you put it on a dinner plate, it'll go through it in time. It's amazing stuff.
Well, try to find that Poison on Tap. You will be stunned, and it follows the dollar right from back in the 30s so they found it was cheaper to sell it than it was to try to find a place to put it. That's all I have to say.
Oh, I appreciate it. Will you repeat the name of that documentary, please?
It's called Poison on Tap, and it goes into the brittle bone disease and why most of the European cities have stopped adding it to the water and how it accumulates in the body, and you can't get rid of it. We water our gardens with it, our lawns, we shower with it. It's just incredible. So Try and find that and watch it. You'll be very impressed.
Great. Hey, thanks so much for the call. Call back anytime. And if anybody else out there, you have a question or a comment about fluoride, give us a call, 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640. So that we were going to kind of get into that. Do we want to? Did you have anything else kind of before we were getting into the other aspects, the more dangerous aspects?
No, I think we pretty well covered it.
Okay.
That was actually what I was going to say next, so the call was very timely.
Good. So that's something that a lot of people.
Yeah, good thing we had him call.
When we have these discussions, if we don't understand that there are different types of the same thing, we're not. When you're like you said, not all fluorides are created equal. We need to understand what the different types are, where they're used. So is the same fluoride that they're putting in the water, this derivative from the chemical plants, the fertilizer plants? I remember that right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the
Among
same?
others.
Is that the same fluoride they put into your Colgate or your Crest toothpaste, or is
No.
those are different fluorides?
No, what's putting in your toothpaste is a pharmaceutical grade fluoride.
And what is it? What's it a derivative? It's just something the calcium
you can look
fluoride.
on
or
you
is
can
it-
look at the ingredient label.
Okay.
It could be sodium fluoride. That's the most typically the one put in toothpaste.
And that one's a good one to put on topically that actually does benefit, or
It's probably fine.
it's not dangerous, but is it beneficial? Or
Yes and no. I don't think it's as beneficial as it's made out to be. However, I do think there is a small benefit from it.
I shouldn't say it's not dangerous because it has a warning label on it that says if you take too much, you need to call poison control. So
Right.
there is a level of
Yep.
danger to it, but it's not the same stuff that they're dumping into the water.
Right. And so a single incident of exposure to a large amount of fluoride, like if you were to eat a tube of toothpaste, it's toxic for a moment. But it's the chronic exposure to it over long periods of time that can cause the real problems.
Okay. Which is what we're dealing with when it's mass medicated through the water system.
Right, and because it does bind in our bones and teeth more irreversibly than does the calcium, that's what he's talking about with the buildup.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a cumulative effect.
And how long when do you start to notice those effects over time? Is different people at different times, or how does that?
Well, and another thing to understand is that your bones turn over in your body. About every 7 years, your body is continually remodeling your bones. You have osteoclasts coming in and eating off pieces of your bone. If you look at under a scanning electron microscope of any bone, you're going to see there are lacunae, or little areas where the osteoclasts are eating away large pieces of bone, and then you have osteoblasts, the bone forming cells coming right behind and laying down new bone. So you're actually regenerating your own bone over time. So as those old crystals are being eaten up and relayed back down, you're getting a whole new skeleton in your body about every 7 years.
So then what you're putting into your body goes into
So
the new
even though there's a
skeleton.
cumulative effect, there's also a decrescendo that takes place as the body is remodeling its bone. And so it's not like it's impossible to get away from or to reverse. It's just going to take some time.
So if our listeners are in a place where in a city where they are putting that into the water system, is it a big enough deal to do something about it? Is there something they can do about it, or what do you suggest?
Myself personally, I usually don't drink tap water anyway, mostly because our water in Eagle Mountain just tastes terrible. But, so if you're not drinking the tap water, it's probably not a big issue. I don't think there's enough fluoride in the water to necessarily cause you harm. I don't know the answer to that, but that's my opinion.
So a couple of years ago when I was looking into this fluoridation thing, the FDA, which I really don't care about them, but they said that the maximum safe level was 7 parts per million of fluoride per water, and I lived in Cottonwood Heights at the time, and I found out that Cottonwood Heights, it seems to work most of the cities in the valley. Cottonwood Heights buys their water from South Jordan. They used to get the water from the canyons, and it was wonderful, delicious water. I liked it, but and I emailed them. The guy, it was so long ago, this was years ago. Some guy that's his job was to monitor the water and get in the crap that they put in it. And he said they were doing 7.5 parts per million.
So it's beyond the FDA's
And in my opinion, if the FDA says it's dangerous at 7, it's probably dangerous at 1. And
I agree that 7 parts per million is really high. These
7.5.
So so let me tell you about this breast milk study. The ideal amount was considered to be 1 part per million at that time. And what was always coming out in the breast milk was about a tenth of that, about 0.1 part per million. And so I don't know if that gives people an idea, but as far as the human body was concerned, the ideal amount was 1/10 of what was considered the ideal amount.
We should go with that then.
So let's go back to the phone lines here on K-Talk AM 1640. And if any other listeners want to call in, 801-254-1640. Caller, what's your name and what's your question?
Yeah, good morning. This is Mark. Yeah, good topic.
Thank you.
Enjoying it so far. Yeah, thank you. So to the good dentist, make sure I understand this correctly. I'm 61, and is it important and valuable for me to go twice a year to my dentist and get these fluoride treatments? That's something that I should be doing. I guess I didn't quite catch the full drift of that.
So I have no qualms myself with the topical fluoride treatment. I think it's one of the areas where it can be very beneficial. I have seen benefits from that. I haven't myself personally seen any negative effects from those twice a year, a few minutes application. It's very targeted. It doesn't go into the system. It's just in the mouth and then washed off. So I do fluoride treatments. At first, before I really did more research, I was a little bit averse to it, and so I just didn't offer that. But I do them now upon request. I don't do them as routinely as probably your average dentist. I don't do them on everybody. I mostly do them when asked, but I don't have a problem doing them either.
Because I think just for our listener, we were getting into a couple of different things. Was that it's a different fluoride than what's in the water, first of all, and then it's under a doctor's care, so you can kind of decide how much is too much or how much is too little.
Right. And if I see children who have a tendency, they look like they're prone to a lot of decay, I will recommend them to have a fluoride treatment, and I do think it helps.
And
so how about an old guy like myself?
If you're having decay issues, I would say good idea. If you have had a life of relatively cavity-free, it's probably not benefiting you a whole lot, but it probably isn't hurting you either.
Okay, and then you said is it good to brush with stannous fluoride or the sodium fluoride, or does it matter?
I don't really know on that, which one would be better. There's several different chemical variants of it. They may not be doing all that much, but I don't think they're hurting that much either. I don't know if toothpaste itself is, because we're using every day, I think that it can have some benefit.
Thanks so much for the call, and we'll be back from right after this commercial break. Give us a call at 801-254-1640. And this is Ben, Micah, and Dr. Thompson. We'll be right back after the break.
Listen up, K-Talk Media. We have one of our own in need of help. After falling very ill, Nevia, a bright, energetic 5-year-old, was recently life-flighted to Primary Children's Hospital, where she was diagnosed with leukemia. She and her family are in need of your help for the emergency medical expenses and treatments Nevia will need to fight for her life. Please help. Give Nevia a fighting chance. Visit ktalkmedia.com and click on the donate link. Every little bit helps, so please find it in your budget to give a little love to a little girl. Thank you.
Welcome back to K-Talk AM 1640, not 630. I am Ben McClintock, your host, with my co-host, Micah Turner.
Hey.
And we are joined in studio with Dr. Jeremy Thompson from GoNewSmile.com. That's NU. That's how new spelled. Go New Smile. And the number is 801-NU-SMILE, NU Smile. And again, we talked about that. I mean, it's just, even my 5-year-old daughter likes going to the dentist. So it's, just begging to go back twice in a week. But we've been talking about fluoride, benefits, dangers, different kinds of fluoride. And we had, before we went to the break, we had the caller call in and ask the question. And if you've got a question, give us a call, 801-254-1640, about, his age and the kinds, the fluoride treatments at the hospital. Not the hospital, at the dentist, and at his age. And so you were saying that it's at his age, it just depends on the history. If he has a history of decay, then it would be beneficial. But if not, then it's
and even prescription fluoride tablets kind of fall in the same category as the drinking water. We've given them tablets of fluoride to ingest, hoping that it'll get into the system, get into the teeth, but it just doesn't really work that way once the enamel's formed. It might incorporate into the interior parts of the tooth where it's not needed, but where you want it is out there where the acid's attacking.
And so we talked about that in the first segment of internally, this is the first 18 months of life where that's beneficial, but after that, only externally does any good.
Yeah.
And so, there's a difference between the stuff that they're putting in the water and the stuff that's in your toothpaste. And so when we do the research, understanding the differences, where they're at, and
and then another thing I wanted to bring up
Yeah.
real quick. So,
Micah.
They're dumping this stuff in the water, and so some people might think, well, if I got to get away from it, so I'll buy filtered water.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to this gentleman about 2 years ago. I only drink reverse osmosis water because tap water doesn't sit well with me. Took me a while to find that out.
All the Ritalin and Prozac that gets filtered through your city water is not sitting well with you.
It doesn't do my bowels good. But we'll spare the details. Okay. Anyway, so I was talking to this gentleman about filtration. It was at PrepperCon 2 years ago. It was the first year I went there with us.
Sponsored by K-Talk Media.
Sponsored by K-Talk Media, yeah. Anyway, and he sold water filtration systems they look pretty snazzy. And he told me that, so reverse osmosis is basically the best you can do. I don't know if distilled can do better, but you still get all this stuff will evaporate with the water and come down in it. So I don't think distilled works very well. But in the reverse osmosis process, he told me that it only can take out 50% of the fluoride every time you put it through reverse osmosis. And he owned this filtration company, and he said they've done lots of tests, and they always send all these things off to independent laboratories. He even told me there's a website you can go to where they take samples from all over the United States and tell you what's in the water at a certain time. I'm sorry, if you're interested in that, I totally forgot about the website, like what it's called, but probably a few trips to the Googles might tell you. But anyway, so if you're trying to get away from this and you're like me, usually I go to Winco and I get the filtered water there, and it's probably just reverse osmosis from some municipality.
Right.
And they even have those machines there. So basically, if you want to significantly reduce beyond the 50%, because that is just what the permeable membrane can do for fluoride. It just can't do any better than 50%. You have to run it through the system multiple times, and each time you're only halving it. So it's kind of a big deal when you're trying to get away from it. Really, the only practical way to get away from all the chemicals that they're putting in the water, especially fluoride, is you have to get water that never had it put in by the state to begin with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So before we kind of get back into the subject, I wanted to bring up the fact that at K-Talk Media, we are really trying to help us be more than just listening, but actually doing.
Is this my time?
Micah?
You love your freedom. Okay. No, okay. Let me. Anyway, you love your freedom, and so do we. And here at K-Talk Media, we're fighting for it. Don't just listen, join us. We need you to help spread the word. Tell your family and friends to listen. Download the K-Talk Media app. Listen online. Like us and share on Facebook at K-Talk Utah. Twitter at KTKK. Kind of, but not the KKK.
2 Ks, not 3.
Instagram or Snapchat at K-Talk Media. If you have or know a great company that you would like to advertise to our amazing audience, then have them contact us through our website, ktalkmedia.com. We need your support. Thanks for helping us keep this voice of freedom strong.
Awesome. And you're not going to hear the topic that we're talking about today on any other station. I think this is why K-Talk's so different than everybody else, is you're going to be hearing the third option. A lot of times in the other stations you hear it's like at defendingutah.org. We like to say, think right and wrong, not right and left. We're trying to give you all the options out there so you can make an informed decision. And especially with medicine, we should have informed consent when we're medicating ourselves, as opposed to just this mass medication that we're dealing with the fluoride issue. So if you've got a question, give us a call, 801-254-1640, 801-254-1640. We're going to go to the phone lines. I am Ben McClintock, and with Micah Turner, joined in studio with Dr. Thompson. Caller, what's your name and what's your question?
This is Mel, M-E-L.
Hey, Mel.
I just wanted to throw out this comment for discussion by your guests. My grandparents were born and raised in a small town in southern Utah, and I'm told there was natural fluoride in the water down there. Both my grandmother and my grandfather never had a cavity in their entire life. Grandma lived, almost to 100. Grandpa was like 91. And they told me that all of their, friends that they grew up with, they never had cavities either. So, of course, this was the era before every bit of food was contaminated with sugar. So I just wondered if these guys might want to talk to that. Unless they have a question for me, I'll just listen off the air.
Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. It's a valid point, and studies do show areas where there's naturally occurring fluoride do have lower decay rates. No question about it. That is the whole premise upon which they are basing the desire to fluoridate the water. So my contest is, if you're going to fluoridate the water, put calcium fluoride in the water. Do something pharmaceutical grade. Do something that makes sense. Let's not put toxic sludge in the. Yeah, I mean, there's
that's not what they're not putting fluoride in the water. They're putting.
And it's not just that chemical. It's a like a kind of a cauldron of different chemicals in that sludge. It's not pure hydrofluorosilicic acid. It's got sulfur and other things in it. So again, it kind of unnerves me to think of what they're putting in there in the name of helping us make our teeth strong.
Well, basically, I think the caller was expressing the concern that what was naturally in the water and what they're dumping in the water now are the same thing.
Yeah.
And even the fluoride is essentially bonded with different chemicals, and therefore it behaves in the body differently. So
correct.
It's not the same thing.
Living in an area naturally fluoridated water, being breastfed, which is most likely your grandparents were breastfed, drinking that water up till age of 1.5 probably got the ideal amount. And our
you cooked with it, so
yeah, and
all
we
the
didn't
different things you
have
do with the water.
this sugar attack like we do. It really is a big deal.
Probably a lot of homemade baby food, so they boiled the fruits and vegetables in the natural fluoridated water.
Yeah, so a lot of things have changed. Let's
go back to the phone lines. You're on K-Talk Radio, AM 1640. What's your name and what's your question?
Yes, thank you. This is truck driver Ray.
Hey, Ray.
I just called in to praise or compliment the dentist industry. I don't know profession, how to put it, but I'd like to compliment it for 2 or 3 reasons, and that is that it's the only industry, again, I don't know what word to use, that I know of that actually tries to put themselves out of business. And what I'm trying to say is they really do work hard to keep cavities down and to promote good health care, good gum, and that says a lot to the integrity, of I'd say the majority, if not all of dentistry. I guess there we go, dentistry. Most professions, unfortunately, in the day we live in, they don't want to reduce the amount of work that they do. They want to increase it, even at the expense of their customers, unfortunately. And integrity's not very high in a lot of areas. So that's my first compliment. And my second compliment is that, back in the 50s, those drills were big and they got pretty hot. And nowadays, with injecting water with the drills, they don't get hot. It's so nice. And then the last thing is the 3D printing. I just had 3 caps replaced with 3D printing, and wow, amazing. It's fun to be in the space age, in the Star Trek. We're in the Star Trek age, 3D printing teeth.
Yeah, we have fun doing that in our office. Everything's digital now, computerized. We don't take impressions anymore. We take digital scans. We use CAD/CAM to mill out the crowns. We sinter them in our own oven. I custom oversee all the fabrication of my own crowns, and they fit better. They're stronger, beautiful. We love what we're doing now, and it's all technology.
You have a mini factory in your office.
Yeah.
Producing that stuff. Thanks so much for the call, Ray. Call back anytime.
Thanks, Ray.
If you've got a question, give us a call, 801-254-1640. We're going to go back to line 3. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi. I just wanted to actually make a statement, really. I wanted to tell this dentist how much I just really appreciate it. Fabulous show. I missed a lot of it, so I'm going to go back on the archives and re-listen to it. But I just wanted to share, I live in Davis County, and we voted whether we wanted to have fluoride in our water or not. And the people in Davis County voted no, we did not want this toxic waste in our water. So then they brought it back 1 or 2 years later, and we voted again, and we voted no, we don't want it. And so then that wasn't good enough because we already voted twice, so they couldn't let that rest. So we had to vote again, and then we lost by 248 votes.
Vote early, vote often.
Exactly what happened to us in
exactly.
Edmonton.
Just keep bringing it back until it just keeps socially engineering the people into thinking it's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just really frustrating, and this has been just so interesting, and I've always been really concerned because I think the biggest organ in our body is our skin, and we're just putting that right into our bodies when we take a shower. It's not even realistic to try to take it out, it sounds like. So anyway, I'll just keep listening. Great show.
Thanks.
I'm loving it, and I'll just keep learning. Thank
Appreciate
you.
the comment.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. And if anybody else has a question, give us a call, 801-254-1640. Do you have a comment on that, on the water coming through the showers and being soaked up by your skin? Do you know?
Did you know that the skin absorbs things? I don't have enough information to
see what the percentages are.
She may be very well true. I have some knowledge, and anybody's welcome to it, but I certainly don't know everything. I'm willing to learn.
Yeah, and then Ray's call, I thought that was pretty funny. That you're in the industry. Truck driver Ray.
Yeah, let's not get confused now. Not that other guy.
You're trying to put yourself out of business, but thankfully you've got people like me that don't take care of their teeth, and so you'll be.
Yeah, Ben and I, you're going to be spending some time with me.
So,
have you wagged your finger at him? I do it at least once a week.
At least.
So,
as we start to wrap up the program, we just got a couple of minutes left. Is there anything you want to make sure that people make sure and let us know your email? I mean, your the website and phone number before we leave. But also, is there anything else that you want to make sure that we remember in this topic of fluoride?
Just knowledge is power.
Yeah. So hopefully, just like our last
Joe,
just like our last caller said, they could go back and listen. We'll have it archived on ktalkmedia.com, as well as at defendingutah.org. So, again, what's your website before we have to leave?
GoNewSmile.com with an NU.
GoNewSmile.com. Dr. Jeremy Thompson, and I am Ben McClintock, and with my co-host
Micah Turner.
And we'll see you next Friday, 9 to 11.
Every time I say my name.
This Defending Utah program was brought to you by the Defending Utah Liberty Store, where you can buy, among other things, the United States Constitution Made Easy by Lonnie Crockett, Ph.D. It was also brought to you by Anderson Accounting, 801-255-0396. Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470. Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com. Mini Zoo comes to you, 801-414-5279. American Appliance, 801-254-2566. The Editor Lady at gmail.com. Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151. The Law Offices of Garrett T. Smith, 385-439-0247.